All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March edition of VRM Insider. I am your host, Tracy Sanderson. We are super excited that you've taken a little bit of time out of your day to join us. We have some really exciting, super valuable information that we're bringing you all today. But before I introduce our guest, I do want to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. And I also want to say happy March to everyone. We made it to March already in 2022. I can't believe it. It's already March. It's amazing. Which for a whole lot of our guests, or not our guests, you are our guests, but you're also our clients. That means your busy season is quickly approaching. So I hope that during this little bit of a breather that you will take a deeper look at what we're presenting today and really give it some attention. I don't normally ask you to really look at something, but this is something I'm asking as a personal favor, a favor to our industry, a favor to yourself to take a look at. So if you have any questions during today's presentation, the way that you can ask those is with your Q&A button. If you're on a desktop, that should be down at the bottom of your screen. If you hover down below, you should see a Q&A in little speech bubbles. You can click on that and ask your question. It'll pop up on my screen during the presentation. If we're at a place that it's relevant to ask that question, I'll put my hand up and say, hey guys, we got a question. If not, we'll hold on to those questions until the very end and go ahead and address those during the Q&A section at the very end. Let's see, any other housekeeping? This is being recorded, just so everybody knows. It's recorded so that you can listen to it again or share it with your teammates. So that information will be available via replay. So be on the lookout for that as well. I think that's all of our actual housekeeping stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our topic for today and our guest. So we are going to be talking about right to rent. This shouldn't be a brand new topic. We have done a webinar on right to rent before. However, it was right before the holidays. People were really busy and we wanted to give all of you an opportunity to look at it one more time. So we have asked a few of our industry experts to come back with us today and give you guys another look at this and a little bit of fresh perspective because we have a different guest on with us today. And we have Scott Leggat, who you have had many opportunities to engage with over the years, not just here on VRM Insider, but through VRMA conferences. And Scott was active as a property manager on the Outer Banks. So many of you know and love Scott just like we do. Scott is the, let me make sure I get it right, Director of Government Affairs and Advocacy for Inhabit IQ. Before that, Scott was over at LSI Tools, which is one of our sister companies. So it's so awesome to have Scott still in the family, but doing something that he's super passionate about, which is making sure that the vacation rental industry is advocated for. Scott is also on the VRMA Board of Directors, and he's a co-chair of the VRMA Government Affairs Committee. So if it's about government or advocacy, Scott's your guy you want to go talk to, or at least one of the guys you want to go talk to. And then we have with us the lovely Tiffany Edwards. So thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us today. This is the first time Tiffany's been on VRM Insider with us, so welcome.
Thank you.
And she is the CEO of Leggat Consulting. And I'm kind of excited to hear more about what Leggat Consulting is because that's new for me as well. But she's also the VRMA Director of, and I'm going to get it wrong, Donor Affairs. Is that right? Donor Services.
Donor Services. Yep.
Donor Services. And a little fact that you may not know about Tiffany is, and I got to see this in person, she was the recipient of the VRMA President's Award at the 2021 International Conference. So congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. And she's also the executive director of the Florida Professional Vacation Rental Coalition. I think I got it right. So we have two people with us who wear a whole lot of hats and are very actively involved in this industry. They are on the front lines of this industry. And to what that means to me is we need to listen to what they have to say and pay attention to what they have to say to us today. And then I have a special guest who will be joining us in a little while, and that is Miller Hawkins. You all have had the opportunity to meet Miller as well. Miller is one of our VRM clients, but he is also the VRMA president. So we are super proud of Miller and what he has been able to do as the VRMA president and the president-elect the year before that. Miller is also the owner of Boo Realty down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So he's coming at this particular conversation from a bunch of different angles. And I think his position and his insight on that is invaluable. So we're really excited that he will be joining us as well. So if you have questions for Miller, he will only be with us for a few minutes. So make sure you chime in while he's here. All right, so I'm going to stop talking so we can let these guys talk. So Scott and Tiffany, take it away.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having us. We so appreciate this opportunity. This is a topic that Tiffany and I work on literally day to day, every day, and it's frankly my passion, and I can tell you it's Tiffany's as well, because we work so closely together. Our lives revolve around advocacy for the vacation rental industry. And I'm so proud to be part of the Inhabit group, as is VRM, because Inhabit has really taken a lead in the advocacy efforts for our industry, and has committed a lot of resources, money, and time to supporting that. And one of those endeavors that Inhabit initiated, but which will go throughout the entire industry through every channel that we can allow it to, every PMS system, is a program called Right to Rent. And Right to Rent is primarily a way to fund advocacy efforts in the vacation rental space. Traditionally, what we have found is that our efforts have lagged behind most other sectors in the hospitality space. And that's simply because we're newer and we really didn't recognize the need to have an organized advocacy program, and consequently funding for vacation rentals is very anemic compared to hotels, motels, resorts, even RV organizations. Everybody has got long and mature fundraising and advocacy efforts in the rest of the hospitality field. And so I'm going to let Tiffany talk here in just a second, but in teeing her up a bit, there's a consensus among long-term people in our industry, experts, investors, everybody who looks at the health of our economy and the health of the vacation rental industry, sees the biggest threat to vacation rentals as regulation. And the message that we want to leave with everybody today is that if you are not dealing with regulatory issues right now, you soon will be. You may think that you're insulated from them. I did. I live in the Outer Banks, ran some of the largest companies here in the Outer Banks, and thought, there is no way on this green earth that we're ever going to have to worry about regulation. Well, the truth is that regulation comes in very many forms, from local government to insurance issues to building inspections. There's many, many ways to regulate our industry. And as people are looking, institutional groups are looking at our industry and looking at whether they should invest in it, one of the things that they consider first is the regulatory environment that we're dealing in, and are there barriers there that will keep them from being successful? And the answer is yes. Tiffany's going to talk to us a little bit about some of those things now.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So wanted to kind of give, a lot of times if you have any individuals who tune in for advocacy, usually they have something going on right now, or they see something coming down the pipeline. You know, a lot of areas that advocacy, government relations is on everyone's radar, because maybe their community is not experiencing something, but maybe something's been introduced on a state or to a neighboring county. So it's put us all a little on high alert. The reason why, there's several main reasons or issues that I feel like have precipitated some of the responses in the government arena, and accelerated more so in a post-pandemic world. One, we have greater national visibility. So we've seen a lot of consolidation of companies. We've seen, a lot more companies go public or have goals to go public. We've also seen an increased demand for vacation rentals, and value there. So overall, we have been, we are definitely have a seat at the table in the tourism industry. So before, we might have been recognized as something else, or the hotels pretty much held on to, the dominant control of what hospitality was in terms of a narrative. But now we're really coming into the forefront, and people aren't just calling us Vrbo, or aren't just calling us Airbnb. They're calling us short-term rentals or vacation rentals. So we have much more visibility. The other thing that is becoming an issue, and has become an issue since the early 1990s, is that there is less housing availability throughout the country. So this isn't just in smaller marketplaces, or for marketplaces that are, tourism dominant. This is all over. It is a national trend that has started back in the 1990s of what is being constructed. Larger homes are being constructed. Entry-level homes are not as common. There's been a very significant decline. And there's been a massive increase in housing prices. Most of you have seen that, probably experienced it. Hopefully you've cashed in on a few of those. But that is also starting to create more conversations around regulations of vacation rentals. It's very easy to point to vacation rentals as being the catalyst of that, but it is not. It is actually a national issue. And more so in that post-pandemic world, I've touched on this, but we have a greater demand. So what that means is that your season is no longer blocked off. We're seeing that there is a longer trend where people are coming more frequently throughout the year, as opposed to just a, whatever week season that you have that you buckle in. So the communities are feeling that a little bit more so, because people have the freedom. They're working from home, they're taking time off, they're realizing what the value of a vacation is. And so they may not just have a vacation during those typical summer, or ski season months. So they're spreading that out. The other thing that we've seen is that there was a 3% increase post-pandemic of early retirement. What that means is that you're seeing a lot of people enter into vacation rental marketplaces as their second home. They're now moving into, or they're buying, that home because they want to live in the life that they assume vacation is like. So we're seeing a lot more residents trying to move into typically vacation rental heavy neighborhoods. And then the other part that we have is there has been a growth in software compliance. There are several companies out there. Some of your local jurisdictions may use them, but they regulate and monitor listings. So they will go in, and anytime that you have an ordinance go through, there are 6 figures in their software, contract, and they will go through all of your listings and pull in and then create code compliance issues. And so they have had a much stronger sales force over the past couple of years, and we've seen more cities adopt and purchase these services. The response of that has been bans, moratoriums, and caps, overburdensome regulations that are prohibitive in terms of running your business, but also unenforceable in a lot of cases, restrictive permitting processes, and then policies that reflect a commercial use, which, as you all know, the use of the home does not change from sleeping or eating. It is residential in nature. And so therefore we try to stay away as much as possible from that commercial use and policies that reflect that.
Tiffany, I think it would be fair to say that we've been flying under the radar for a long time because we were a mom and pop industry. But what has happened over the last few years and accelerated exponentially through the COVID period is that vacation rentals, short-term rentals have come to the fore in terms of consumer preference, where hotels and motels were the automatic place that the vast majority of people stayed when they went on vacation. Now there's as many bedrooms in vacation rentals as there are all the hotel and motel rooms across the country, actually across the world now. We outnumber the other sectors in capacity and also in consumer preference. The latest polls show a strong preference for vacation rentals over the traditional options that people would have when they were vacationing. And so this has created a reaction among those groups to protect their turf. We can talk a little more about it, but in the chat, our guest has joined us here and he has a limited time. So Miller, everybody I think on the call knows you. Hopefully they do. Miller is, as Tracy said, the current president of the VRMA, a personal friend, owns a company in South Carolina that's very successful, has lived and breathed this, is a family business for most of his career here. And I just can't tell you how we appreciate his strong leadership that he's given to the vacation rental community, because my theory is he's taken this year off because I don't see how he can run a business with everything else he's doing.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the kind words. And yes, I do consider us friends before anything else. We're business partners. We're board member partners. We go back. So and thank you also, Tiffany, for doing all that you do. Yes, Scott said I'm the current VRMA president. I'm also the chair of the Advocacy Fund, and we work very hard. We're going to continue to work very hard in raising funds this year, in conjunction with the Right to Rent program. And when I heard about the Right to Rent getting kicked off and with Inhabit IQ and what they were doing, I immediately went to VRM and said, when are we going to do it, and sign me up. And so I was the beta tester. My company, Boo Realty here in Myrtle Beach, was the beta tester for the Right to Rent with VRM software. When I heard they were talking, I was going to be an attendee today to listen in, but then I talked to Scott yesterday. I was like, let me know how I can help, and because I don't see why everybody who's a VRM client doesn't sign up for this Right to Rent. When it was presented to me as, okay, are you ready? Literally, my staff checked the box to participate. It was $1, $2, or $3. For some reason, I thought it was $1, $3, or $5, and I was going to do $5, but I chose the $3. It was turned on. It immediately started tagging reservations, where it would there's no opt-in or opt-out. You select that it's going to be $3 per reservation. When the guest stays with you and checks out, it disperses with your monthly month-end money. It disperses a check made out payable to VRMA Advocacy in Washington, D.C. All you have to do is put it in an envelope, stamp it, and send it off. These funds, Tiffany can go into it in a minute of what they're used for and everything. But the one thing I'd like to say is being not only as a president, but on the Advocacy Fund, and working closely with the collaborative and the government affairs of VRMA. If you think that you are immune to any sort of government regulation in your area, you could not be further from the truth. If you have a pulse and you have a business that's in vacation rentals, I don't care where you are on the planet, the government regulations is going to visit your neighborhood, and they're going to try to shut you down. It's happening in my backyard, North Myrtle Beach. It's happening down the coast in Hilton Head. VRMA has stepped in and done we put together worked with economists and have a economic impact study for the state of South Carolina, which in turn is generating 48,000 jobs for the state and has an impact on our economy here of $4.8 billion with this study. So the right to rent and the advocacy fund donations collectively go to fund these type events to help you, the vacation rental manager or supplier. It keeps you in business. So government regulations will come to your area. You will need us. And I'm hoping that every one of you all click the button and sign up. It is seamless. It's easy. Set it and forget it, and you don't have to do anything. So feel free to call me at any time. They can put my email address in the chat box there, but reach out anytime and I can answer any questions VRM wise or VRMA wise. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Miller. So you can see Miller leads by example here. When he said he wanted to sign up, I mean, before we could get the programming done in VRM, every time he saw me, he said, well, when are you going to activate it for me? When are you going to activate it for me? And we really appreciate that leadership that Miller has shown in supporting this program. Tiffany started talking a little bit about some of the regulatory categories there, and I think you're going to continue a little bit along that line now.
Yeah, so just kind of going back to that, I think it's important to note that, piggybacking off what you said, Scott, though, the hotels, because the demand is so much higher, we're in this position because it is very fragmented. So we have regulations on a local level, on a state level, and not necessarily on the federal level, but we're residentials, right? So in a commercial aspect and for hotels, they have a lot that they have to follow. And then they're also in a separate area. The fact now that there is a demand for us, that the neighborhoods, there are a lot of people who may be moving in, or a lot of people who want to get into the vacation rental, game or industry. I think we're going to start seeing more. It's also important to note that bans, moratoriums, caps are not just the issue, right? Permits, permit processing, that's not just the issue. For example, in Florida, we just had to add on an amendment because they were actually trying to prevent 1 hour motel and human trafficking, but they lumped in vacation rentals. So most of you on this call would laugh and go, well, we don't rent by, the hour. But if you have a late checkout, do you charge for that? That's considered renting by the hour, right? Because your reservation is actually ended on that day. You're coming in, it would be a new folio of who's coming. So it could be considered that. And so someone could come back. So it's little pieces like that we just have to stay in charge of. We want to make sure that we're not lumped in to those motels, right? Because it's very easy if we're not organized and sharing the same narrative to do that. So that's just a small example of what all we have to stay on top of.
So in tagging on to that, and Miller's point that if you think it's not coming to you, you're sorely mistaken. We are dealing. Tiffany and I get calls literally every day with a new regulation being proposed. We have a system that tracks regulations in every municipality, state, county in the country. And there are over 100 new regulations proposed each week for the vacation rental industry. There are towns that built their whole economy on vacation rentals in the state of Colorado, ski towns that now have groups of people trying to outlaw vacation rentals in those ski towns. Hawaii, which is synonymous with vacations and vacation rentals, is probably the most restrictive state in the country. And the case up there at Tiffany, and I think you alluded to it when you we're talking, it's not all direct regulations. Sometimes it's building codes. We have a substantial company up in Deep Creek, Maryland, who the fire marshal there arbitrarily decided that any home with 5 bedrooms or greater would be treated as commercial property and require all the features that a commercial building would have to have: sprinkler systems, ADA compliance, basically would, if, in most cases, take those homes right out of someone's inventory.
So to talk through some of those 3 things, because this is important of how, you know, as you look at the issues and what are the solutions and how does right to rent help? The issues that Miller's talking about in South Carolina, that study, the economic impact study, which is really, really important. That data is super important. It provides cover for people who are, for elected officials who support vacation rentals, but also just for there to be a holistic approach to understand the totality and the importance of vacation rentals. And what that means, because where's that money going to come from if you overregulate us? The VRMA put that economic impact study together. They also were able to bring all the industry stakeholders together so that we're sharing the same voice. You know, that the Maryland issue that Scott just alluded to, we were able to get a fire code, you know, safety paper out by, so to talk about why there was not a need for those commercial like fire code issues. And then for, you know, my thing in Florida, you know, as that example, some of this money went to some lobbying efforts there with this, you know, the group that we have in Florida. So that is really where right to rent can help. So it's all these kind of donations that help build and provide some lobbying services and some data collection. And we'll talk a little bit about how that breaks down, but I want to talk about how it works. And so Scott, if you want to kind of jump in, we've been at, you know, this slide
Sure.
has had a chance to kind of read it through, so we won't take too much time, but and Miller talked a little bit about it, but how this works within the VRM kind of system and in general of right to rent.
Yeah, so we probably got a little bit ahead of ourselves because Miller's time, he had other commitments on either side of this call. And so we definitely wanted to hear from him. But what we have done in essence is take a page from the hotel motel sector and how they fund their advocacy efforts. And as we mentioned, that's a very mature industry. Their advocacy efforts are well established. There's hardly a city of any size in the country that doesn't have a advocacy organization or representation from the hotel motel sector, and probably each of those towns and cities have a greater spending budget than all VRMA has for our entire national efforts. But we took a page from their book, and what the hotel motel sector does is that their membership, and it's very extensive and pretty universally accepted, donates a small little portion of every transaction that is set aside to go into their advocacy fund. And so we looked at how we could do that in the vacation rental space. And up to recently, it's been difficult to do because who's going to track all that? Who's going to get everybody signed up to participate in it and, you know, collect all the money involved? It's just almost an inconceivable nightmare because, as Tiffany mentioned, we are a somewhat fragmented industry, certainly compared to the more mature sectors that have been around longer. But now technology exists to facilitate that through the PMS systems. And IIQ was the first to jump on board here with their PMS systems, VRMs, Streamline, LiveRes, iTrips. And we realized that we could help the industry by handling this right directly within a PMS system, coding it in a way that would take people could voluntarily do a small transaction fee and set it aside for the advocacy for our industry. And so in essence, what it does is that if you were to go into the VRM admin area, and Tracy will provide a link and instructions how to do this, you simply say, I want to participate in right to rent, and I'd like to donate $1, $2, or $3 per transaction for that. And then it asks you where that money is going to come from. And typically the people who are participating now have taken it from an admin fee or another program fee that they have. Many of them have just raised those fees $1 or $2 to facilitate that in their system. And so it's really not adding additional cost to a property manager. It does add maybe $1 or $2 to each reservation, but nothing that is going to be a decision maker in terms of whether people rent a particular property or not, because it's such a small amount. But because of the vast number of transactions that occur nationally, it has the capacity to really fund the vacation rental short-term stay industry and put it on parity with the hotel motel sector, and allow us to be effective with our advocacy and lobbying efforts. Yeah,
so once the system and you sign up for it, kind of, we talked about what some of the money would go to, but let me see, there we go. So the money is, like Scott said, per booking. Once it's realized, you get the end of the month report. The distribution of funds is really important to note. So 40% goes to national efforts, 40% goes to regional or localized efforts, and then the remaining goes to a reserve. So just in case there's some type of issue like the pandemic, we have those reserve funds. Maybe there's some other, massive issue that comes up. We have the ability to pull funds from there. But the supported programs are those, the professional support, the issue tracking, the response, quicker response, response time, lobbying, and then, communication. And then we've got, the national focus of making sure that, and this is what I think is most important for us now, because we have been fragmented, is that we're all rowing from the same boat, and we're sharing the same message of what we are, who we are, professional, what our standards are, what our policies and procedures are, and how it's important that we're localized. VRMA just came out with a public relations campaign that helps define what a professional is, which is meaning that it's local, you have consistent high standards, and you're tax paying. And so making sure that we all are continuing along those, those same lines, it's easier to speak to those elected officials on that. But we feel like those funds, when this was first crafted, it's really important to make sure that you have that regional, local ability to pull funds, because the issues that you have in Colorado may be very different, or are very different than what we experience here in Florida. So.
Yeah, so to give some specifics to the response in terms of how the money is used, mostly we're looking at supporting local efforts and local alliances in dealing with the issues they have. And that can range anything from expertise and counseling and helping physically build and form an alliance, to things like economic impact statements, affordable housing studies, cost of compliance studies. We're doing those things all across the country right now, and we're building a stronger database so that when someone says, well, vacation rentals make housing less affordable and there's not as much capacity for local residents were able to show that, you know, that may on the surface make sense, but it actually isn't in reality the case, that the people who are renting vacation rental homes are not renting those long-term, that they don't have an interest in renting them long-term, that they want personal use out of them and wouldn't put them into long-term rentals. And so, and we can talk about the exact economic impact of it, what we bring to a community and what would be lost if a community banned vacation rentals or restricted them severely.
Yeah, and one of the other benefits too, I know we're all very involved with VRMA, but one of the other benefits, with them overseeing this is you also get that free first year of membership for VRMA. So if you're not a member already, then you will then become one, and have access to all of the programs, education that they have as well. So that's really important. I think that, donating to, and, not just government relations, but, all that VRMA has to offer.
And Tiffany,
right.
I just wanted to say too, like, I feel like that is such an amazing give that that the VRMA is giving away for anyone who wants to participate in this program. I mean, being a member of VRMA has such amazing value. We're members in a different way because we're a vendor, but the possibilities of interaction there and networking and just information in general is so phenomenal. So I just want to say on behalf of everybody who's sitting on this side of the table, thank you for making that VRMA membership free. It's such a great bonus to being able to participate in this program.
Yeah, so when IIQ first started talking about this, there were people outside of IIQ, but advising us, well, go ahead and set this up with your IIQ companies, but you should control the money and where it's going to be spent. And we said, absolutely not. We're going to select a partner who's better placed to do this, is objective about how the money is spent, and has had the longest presence in that field. And so VRMA was the natural partner for us to work with. They are the trusted authority in the vacation rental space, and we are happy to partner with them, but also want to reiterate that this is not exclusive to Inhabit companies. Escapia, Track, Barefoot, other PMS suppliers are joining in this year, and their clients will be participating in this. Even some of the channel partners have talked to us about participating. So we should have an exceptionally strong reach in a coordinated effort that we've been missing in the past, simply because we're a very competitive group of people, and it's hard to get people to cooperate. But the will is there now, and the technology is there now, so that we can really begin to have a robust effort that supports people across the country.
So we've already kind of touched on some of our current advocacy projects, but just as it relates, so there's another fund that we do, VRMA Advocacy Fund, that's something VRMA had done on its own prior to Right to Rent coming into the marketplace. It's based on, donations to that, not something that is, pushed through a software system. But so that's what we have been working with over the last couple of years. And right now we're working on that, that public relations campaign. We've started it in Florida. So we have targeted that one of the best places for us to pick up on this narrative of what a professional is the political blog posts. So you have elected officials. There's usually a political blog post in every state that every elected official gets on every morning. So really trying to generate content onto those posts. And believe it or not, they cost money. And so putting that through, that's been part of our process. We are building up our robust toolkit. It will be a one-stop shop for basically all the things that you need for quick access, talking points, case studies. We also have about 7 affordable housing studies that have been requests from different members throughout the country. We have 2 economic impact studies that were just released. We have that fire code safety paper that has come through. So there are several different projects that we're working on and working with members based on specific areas throughout the country. And Scott and I usually use this phrase, but a threat to one is a threat to all. And it's only a Google search away. I've been in many city councils where they have picked an ordinance in a location that is not even near us, but they like how restrictive it is, so they'll try to push it forward. So our goal with right to rent is to react quickly and swiftly in response to some of those ridiculous bans and ordinances.
Sure. Tiffany, that being said, I do want to let everyone know that both VRMA, the Right to Rent program, supports being good citizens in our community. We want to comply with the law. We won't want to control the issues that bother neighbors, whether it's parking in someone's driveway or noise or party homes. We want to pay our taxes and do our part the way any other business in a community does, but we also want to be treated fairly. So one of the biggest things that we look at as we analyze regulation, is it fair to all? Is this just isolated to owners of vacation rental properties? Are we being having to follow a different set of standards than other homeowner types? And so, but the fact is that this isn't to get out of paying taxes, paying license fees where they're required. It's to get fair treatment and to keep the vacation rental community in business.
Yes, I think the most important thing is to make sure that we're a part of the solution. We help bring the compromises instead of allowing it to be from others.
Great. Should we open it for any questions now?
Yeah, if anyone has any? If not, we have our, our email addresses. Tracy will send those out afterwards. So if you start to think of anything that you may have questions about, we're happy to respond to those as well.
Yeah, I do not see any questions right this second. Now, Tiffany, you did tell me earlier before we started the webinar that you did have like just a one-page overview. So she is going to supply that to us. It's just a document that you can have to print off to share with other people in your workspace. That will be a nice little just at a glance information about the Right to Rent program. But there's also a lot of really great information on your website, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we'll send out that email or that web link as well, and it should be in that document. So we'll get that out to everyone.
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact Tiffany or myself personally. I feel like I've got to reiterate again what Miller said, though. If you think this couldn't happen to you or happen where you are, it truly is only a matter of time. And there are areas where family companies have been in business and are ready to hand them down to their children and grandchildren. And now they worry about whether there's going to be a business there for them to do, simply because regulations have come into place that would make it untenable to continue operating.
And I have a question for you both. I'm thinking about our particular client base, and we have a pretty wide range of clienteles from, small mom and pops, vacation rental property managers business, up to some pretty large ones as well that are pretty dominate their regions. But I would imagine that if you were on the smaller end of that scale, or even in the middle part of that scale, that the idea of trying to fight any kind of legislation or regulatory issues would just feel like an impossible battle to fight. Is that like the sense of people are getting, in that by being able to kind of come together to focus on that together as a cohesive unit, that feeling begins to start to kind of go away?
I think that's part of it, but I also think it's intimidating to approach. When you get an ordinance or you read a piece of legislation, it's almost overwhelming to go, how exactly does this affect me? And then how do I make sure that and I speak this from personal experience, how do I make sure that my talking points don't hurt it more? How am I willing to compromise and find suggestions that would be better for my business without, creating or agreeing to something that could potentially harm me without, unforeseen consequences? So I think making sure that you can bring other players and like-minded individuals, not only from your marketplace, but outside of that marketplace, to go, hold on a second, your software actually does this, or, whatever it is. I think that that's probably one of the most beneficial, and it helps provide that confidence level of going, this is something we can compromise to. This is how I need to approach it. This is the narrative that I need to take. And so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And also, even for mom and pops, I mean, we're, mom and pop in several of our locations, it's making sure that you have the relationships there and build the relationships with elected officials, build the relationships with small businesses, and trying to target that. So it's not so overwhelming. You almost have a little bit more of a playbook of what are your next steps.
And the thing that I would add to that is that in almost every one of these battles and every one of these calls that Tiffany and I get on an almost daily basis, we are fighting these battles from behind, because people don't get motivated until a regulation is in place or proposed. And sometimes it can happen so swiftly. And the buffer against that is to form your alliances, your local organizations now ahead of regulations coming in. There are a lot of issues that you can deal with other than regulations that benefit your community and are compelling reasons to form an alliance. But we should be forming alliances ahead of regulations, cultivating relationships with county and town officials, as Tiffany suggested. If there have been organizations that we've worked with, and we don't hear about it until the issue is on the ballot the next month, because when that issue happens, it takes time to pull an organization together. It may take a couple of months to form a board, to get a website up, to in some cases even hire consultants, and and by that time you've missed the boat, because the vote's up. You haven't had any time to do the real work. You've been doing the effort to just get a group of people together. So I would encourage everybody to really reach out to your local vacation rental community, wherever you are, and start to form those alliances now, because there's going to be any number of ways that will benefit you in the future.
I'd go one step further. It's an election year. Know who your candidates are and start building up those relationships. They will be interested to come and talk to you. Go talk to them, figure out what the issues are. See if your local chamber will do an education session so that you can inform them what vacation rentals are. Be that voice. You have the opportunity in election year to do that. And that's something you can do tomorrow. So I think that's really important. Cultivating those relationships in an election year is massive. And part of that is, donating, but also being able to bring them some, what it is that you do, and a face to the business.
I love it. And if someone truly didn't know where to start, if a property manager was like, I want to do these things, I hear what you're saying, I want to donate, we can help them get started there, but they're like, I don't, like, who do I even talk to? Do I go talk to the mayor? Like, who do I talk to? Is that questions that you guys field?
Yeah,
All the time.
Email Scott. Email Scott.
It is.
I'm happy to help. My background is, is lobbying, and I work a lot with VRMA. I'm also a property. My husband and I own several property management companies. But Scott, it was probably your go-to, and he knows enough people, and that's the great part of being connected within VRMA. We know enough people to kind of get you connected based on your question that you may have.
Right.
But yeah, if you're unsure, reach out to someone and ask.
Yeah, and especially for VRM clients, IIQ created this position of government affairs and advocacy to serve their clients specifically, as well as serve the industry. But it's a rare day when I don't hear from somebody who's part of the VRM, Streamline, LiveRes, iTrip family.
Well, we are certainly, I was going to say lucky, but I think we're more than that. I'm going to say blessed. We are just so thankful to have you on board, Scott, and all of the years of expertise that you bring, and then the passion that this team together that you guys have built is providing for our industry and advocating on behalf of the property managers, and maybe just taking that burden off of them just a little bit so they can go focus on the thing that they're best at, which is managing those properties and making amazing vacations come true. So there's so much value here. We are, I feel like this conversation could go on for a really long time, and we could talk about so many different things, but we're getting close to the end of our hour, and I don't see any other questions, but I definitely want to make sure that everybody watching this now or later knows, you heard it here, Scott is available. and
Tiffany, because my first call is always Tiffany. The truth is she's a powerhouse, and the presidential award that she was given last fall could not have gone to a more deserving person. Okay. She works tirelessly for our industry.
And she's she's a mom and has a home, and man, I mean, we got an amazing crew.
But I will not do operations within a vacation rental company ever again. So this is the way to start. So I have massive respect for any of you who are in the operations, because I can't go back. I'll deal with the politicians for you.
We appreciate it. Oh, let's see. We do have one chat. Let's just see. Barbara just said this was so informative, and thank you so much. You are welcome, Barbara. And all right, does anybody else have any last words they'd like to throw out to our guests?
I don't think so. We really appreciate y'all joining us, and please reach out if you have any questions.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Tracy.
For doing
You're
it.
welcome. Yeah. Everybody, you can look for the recap and information in an email, or you can find it on our website. It will also be on the VRM admin console, so you can find it in all kinds of places. Any of the information that we talked about today will be included in that recap, and any of the things that Tiffany talked about. The training for how to set this up in VRM will be in that as well. And we'll make sure Miller's information in there. Miller always likes us to include his information anytime that he's out there. He says, call me, email me. So we'll have that there. And we'll make sure that you know how to get in touch with Scott and any of the Tiffany and any of the team over at VRMA. So thank you so much, you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And we will talk to everybody else next month on VRM Insight.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.